Right, day 22 of 30, getting there. Um, just saw today Facebook released a new updated app and a dating app. I think that's going to be pretty massive. Dating such a big part of the internet, and Facebook has so much information to really take a hold of that market. Um, I also saw Zuckerberg just did a talk with Yuval Harari, who wrote *Sapiens Homo Deus* and 21 Lessons for the 21st Century, which is should be an interesting interview. And Facebook just did their F8 conference, so that should be interesting to watch later. It's already 11:30 p.m. here, so it's already running late. I gotta get to sleep soon. So my topic or thought today will be on Western medicine versus Eastern medicine. I don't know much about either, but I don't think there's enough credit given to Eastern medicine. So there's a story I was reading of during the Vietnam War. There was a lot of Chinese troops, a lot of troops in general, but a lot of Chinese troops dying of malaria. The Chinese had a huge incentive to figure out a cure for it or figure out a way to prevent it from happening. So did the Vietnamese and the Americans and other countries too. But the Chinese were investing a lot of time and effort into it, and they couldn't figure it out. But there was this one woman who had very little scientific background. She just studied a lot of the ancient Chinese texts on Eastern medicine. She would boil down stuff, she would mix stuff, she would try it on herself, she would see what works. And she ended up discovering a cure for malaria, um, which to date has now saved something like 500 million lives. And in, I think, 2015 it was, she was the first woman to be awarded the Nobel Prize of Chemistry in China for finding the cure to malaria back during the Vietnam War. Now, that's just one story of many, but that says something to the effects of Eastern medicine, where they learn by just generation after generation after generation of passing down information on plants and different natural elements, and using them on the human body. Well, I think in the West we kind of study the chemistry down at like a scientific level, and we learn a lot of things that that the Eastern medicine people don't necessarily know or have studied throughout history. And one of the things with Eastern medicine is they may know something works, but they don't know why it works. But in the West, we won't use anything unless we know why it works, even though if there is something that actually works. And that's part of it could be like a lot of Eastern medicine could be the placebo, because the placebo is a real thing. It actually works. And I guess if you can just play the placebo and it works, then that's effective, right? But I don't think Eastern medicine is really about the placebo. I think there's a lot more to it. If you look at just places in rural countries or rural Thailand, rural places in Thailand, 70% of Thailand's rural. Um, a lot of people know a lot about plants and agriculture and just like living off the land, where they could survive without any electricity or any plumbing or all these things. Well, the West, if we didn't have electricity or a city that manages our water or farmers that grow food for us, we would die because we're so disconnected from that stuff. But there's something to be said about Eastern medicine. Thailand has the about the same life expectancy as the average American, at least right now. And I think there's something to be said about that. Part of that is diet, but part of that is also like these people, they know how to live off the land and off the plants. They know what plants help your what if you eat the plant and you boil the plant, whether it helps your stomach or gets rid of a headache or cleans your skin or prevents getting cancer or prevents heart disease, or all of these things that in the West people use. We'll do like blood tests or things like that. People will here will just kind of like look at you, or they can look at your tongue and tell you all sorts of things about you that are more or less correct. Well, in the West, we would probably have to do a lot more testing. Something I've heard before is like dengue fever in the West. We can't actually diagnose properly. Like, there's no way to fully diagnose dengue fever, but apparently, Eastern medicine, they can diagnose it like perfectly, and I mean it's hard to say what that means, but there's something to be said about that. And yeah, I think Eastern medicine just doesn't get enough credit. And I think there's the best thing is probably a combination of the two, Eastern medicine and Western medicine coming together. Western medicine is more about studying the science of things and studying things from a book. as opposed to Eastern medicine is just like thousands of years of handed down information, which if it's been handed down that long, it probably means it's useful in one way, shape, or form. And like I said, people in the East live just as long, if not longer, than people in the West. Um, so there's something to be said about that. I've also heard that in the West, we typically will, whenever we get sick, that's when we go pay for the doctor. But I've heard in China, could be wrong about this, but I've heard that you pay the doctor when you're healthy and you don't pay the doctor when you're sick. So it's because like the doctor's role is to keep you healthy, to propose a diet or propose a plant to keep you healthy. But when you get sick, it means the doctor's not doing their job. It's it's an interesting kind of different look on health. And health is kind of an interesting one as well because like what role does like so when we look at like the obesity epidemic, is it the government's role to jump in and say people like here's how you should eat and we should tax sugar and all these things or whatever it is, or is it up to the individual to make that decision? And it's a kind of a tough boundary because the individual should be free to make their own choices, but at the same time, if too many individuals or the vast majority of society is ending up, killing themselves unknowingly because of the food that people are eating voluntarily, I think it's probably right for the government to jump in so it doesn't burden the system. Because in theory, if you take good care of your health, there's a good chance um, people who are 30 years old have a good chance living to 100, considering technology getting significantly better. But if you don't take care of your health, then as you get older, it becomes a lot more liability on society. And the people who are healthy, basically, who don't have to go to the hospital, are paying, using their tax money to pay for people who aren't taking care of themselves. And part of taking care of your health at a younger age is preventative care for the future. It makes your future life, well, not only your current life, but your future life a lot better. It lowers your risk for virtually every disease. Staying physically active and eating healthy lowers your risk for Alzheimer's and cancer and heart disease and virtually everything else that kills us. I think it even slows aging, depending on how you look at it. But in the East, they look at these things in a very similar light. I think they are influenced slightly by the West, but eating a healthy, balanced diet is an important thing. I've heard there's an idiom in Japan where it says something along the lines of "Don't eat to full," like don't eat to where you're actually full. And one of the theories of the Japanese living so long is that they're not over-consuming calories and their diet is quite balanced. I think in Japan there's something like 90,000 people who are over 100 years old. There's islands that are full of people over that, and it's interesting to learn, and we'll see more throughout the coming years what makes people live longer and healthier and better lives. But I think there is a lot to be said about Eastern medicine that's overlooked by the West. And living in Southeast Asia, I've got a slight glimpse into that. So yeah, that'll be it for now. See you tomorrow.